concept you would find in most, if not all, CE marking regulations and directives is that of presumption of conformity. And what presumption of conformity essentially means is that products that comply with harmonized standards under a certain regulation or directive are generally presumed to comply with the requirements of that specific regulation and directive. And this is important because if you take a regulation or directive like the Toy Safety Directive or the EMC Directive or the Low Voltage Directive, they don't provide the, let's say, exact technical criteria or the technical specifications that must be implemented for a particular product. Okay, so these directives and regulations, they set the high-level requirements. A product cannot interfere with other equipment, or a toy cannot be unsafe. But it doesn't tell us how to achieve this, and that's why we have harmonized standards. That's what presumption of conformity is about. In order to comply with the regulation or directive, we have to comply with the standard. So the next objective is to identify a harmonized standard for a particular product. And to do so, we have to go to the European Commission website, and you can find a page dedicated to harmonized standards. And in the context of CE marking, you have various regulations and directives covering different aspects. And as you know, or likely know, your product could be subject to more than one regulation and directive. So there's not one single list of harmonized standards. Instead, you have lists under each individual regulation and directive. So that's why you have multiple items here, okay? You have those for gas appliances, you have for machinery, pressure equipment, and for electronics and toy safety and so on, and PPE, okay? So you have to, well, what I'm getting to is that you have to select you have to go to the page that relates to a regulation or directive that covers your product. So let's say that we stick to the EMC directive, then we click on this one, and you scroll down here and you will then find a list. And this can be downloaded, okay? Now, this is what it could look like. So I downloaded what I believe is the latest version from September 2022. And this is the list of harmonized standards under the EMC directive. So in the case that my product is covered by the EMC directive, and this is where I would look for harmonized standards. And well, we have 27 pages here, so we better get to work. These harmonized standards, they cover different aspects of compliance, if I can put it that way. Okay? And some of them are for specific products, like in this case, industrial trucks, construction machinery, cable networks, railway applications. So it's not just consumer products. But in short, what you need to do is to simply go through the list and identify those that could be relevant. If you can see anything hinting that it would apply to your product, you can mark it down as an option. But as you can see, there's quite a few standards here. Now, bear in mind, more than one can also apply to the very same product. Okay? Now, it can also be very challenging to make this assessment. And if you look at this and you simply cannot conclude, you cannot come to any conclusion, you cannot assess, you cannot identify any relevant standard with, let's say, a relative degree of certainty, then the other option is to also go to a testing company like TV Rhineland or Bureau Veritas or SGS and so on, and ask them to make this assessment for you. That's also an option. But in short, just to repeat, CE marking regulations and directives, they have this principle of presumption of conformity. And in order to conform with the regulations and directives, you have to make sure a product complies with harmonized standards. And you can find lists on the European Commission website. You may have to download more than one, depending on the regulations and directives that apply to the product. And then you have to scan the list and do your best to see if you can find something that is seemingly relevant to your product or subsystems or components. And if that doesn't work, you can take it to a lab and ask them to make an assessment for you.